Bottom of your screen, we're going to check we can see and hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I hope everybody else is also.
Yeah, everyone seems smiley and happy on this end. So I think we can hear you well. If I could just ask you, for example, to speak about the weather, I'm just going to listen a bit longer to your sound.
Well, I'm in Austin, Texas, and it's actually a bit cloudy today, but the temperature is comfortable.
Okay, that's good. Here it was raining earlier, so we've got it slightly worse. So we can hear and see you well. I'm aware you haven't used the platform before, so I will just very briefly explain to you a couple of the features. You see the mic and cam button at the bottom of your screen that you just used. We will handle that for you during the meeting. So when the button is red, it means you're visible. When it is green, it means you're audible. Next to that button, you have a little hand icon, and that is where you can raise your hand if you want to say that you're interested in taking the floor. You also have a little chat bubble in the bottom right, and there you can interact in the chat, let us know if you need anything. And also in that chat, we have our IT support number if you need assistance with anything at all during the meeting. Okay? Do you have any questions? Wonderful.
No.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a nice meeting and let us know if you need anything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Rashidi. We're just going to check very quickly if we can see and hear you. So could you please press on the mic and cam button at the bottom of your screen?
Hello, can you see me and hear?
Yes, I can see and hear you well. If you could just speak for me for a moment longer, I'm just going to listen to your sound.
Sure, I can. I'm trying to see if I can blur my back, but I guess that's not an option.
I think you can do that if you click on your setting cog at the bottom of the screen next to the mic and cam button.
Sure.
If you click there, I think the background option, and then you can choose the blurred background from there.
On the video, right? No, there is just camera option.
Let me see.
Oh, it says background image enabled by moderator.
I've put the European Parliament logo like that. Maybe that's better like
That's
that.
fine.
Okay, thank you. We will handle everything for you during the meeting. So when the button is red, you're visible. When it is green, you're audible. You can interact with us in the chat in the bottom right if you need anything. And in the bottom left, you have a hand icon. You can raise your hand if you would like to ask for the floor.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much and have a nice meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hear we are good. All the technical connections are working very well. So I would like to welcome you to today's meeting of the Delegation for Relations with the People of Iran. Next to me is my Vice Chair, Bart Groothuis. So the two of us will be running the show together with a number of very exciting guests online, because today we chose to have our meeting as a public meeting and not as an in-camera one. Still, I have to do some housekeeping before we can start with the interesting stuff. First one, adoption of the minutes of the meetings of 19th May. The minutes are in your files, dear colleagues. If there are no comments sent to the Secretariat before the end of this week, we will consider the minutes as adopted. Now, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, thank you all for being with us today. As we have limited time for our meeting and a full program of speakers, I will refrain from making any further announcements, but let us just proceed directly to the main item on our agenda. Together with our distinguished guests, we will continue today our series of discussion on the repressive practices of the Iranian regime against its own people. Before the summer recess, we examined these practices within Europe in the form of transnational repression and considered European Union's response. And this work, by the way, is ongoing also in the Human Rights Subcommittee and will be continued in the Foreign Affairs Committee, where we will, in the course of next year, adopt a resolution, an initiative report on transnational repression. Today, we will turn our attention to a particularly insidious dimension of repression, digital repression inside Iran, surveillance, censorship, and the regime's tactics to erode civic space. These practices, and Iranians know it better than us, regrettably are not new. In its resolution of 19 January 2023 on the EU's response to the protests in Iran following the killing of Gina Mahsa Amini and the subsequent executions, the European Parliament called on EU member states to enable Iranians to access a free and open internet despite the regime's extensive censorship. Furthermore, in the 2023 and the 2024 annual report on the implementation of the Common Foreign and Security Policy, Parliament condemned the Iran regime's campaign of harassment, surveillance, and intimidation against Iranian activists. It also denounced the regime's use of information manipulation and malign interference as instruments to suppress dissent, undermine accountability, and close the remaining spaces for civil society. In the aftermath of this year's Israeli and US strikes on Iran, digital repression has intensified to unprecedented levels. The Iranian regime has not only expanded mass surveillance and censorship, but also temporarily cut the country off from the global internet. This so-called blackout strategy isolates citizens and human rights defenders, conceals evidence of state violence, and prevents external monitoring of the regime's actions. To help us examine these developments in more depth, I am delighted to welcome amongst us today representatives from the Mian Group, whose work provides vital legal, technical, and advocacy support to organizations promoting human rights in Iran and across the Middle East. We had also hoped to welcome a representative from ASL 19, a dedicated group working to protect community safety and ensure secure, barrier-free access to information. However, the speaker, Feredon Bashar, informed us this morning that he is sick and they could not find a replacement, so we are sending our best wishes and hope we will have someone from ASL 19 amongst us in one of the next sessions. So without further ado, I would actually like to give the floor to Mr. Mani Mostafi, Director of the Mian Group, who will begin by providing a concise overview of the current state of the internet and digital security in Iran and how civil society is responding to the evolving geopolitical context, particularly in the aftermath of the 12-day war. Good to see you, Mani. Feel free to just start. We can see and hear you very well.
Thank you to you, and thank you to the Iran delegation for this opportunity. It's very important to talk about digital repression in the context that it actually exists in Iran. Iran, as you all know, is one of the most repressive states in terms of civil political rights. Free expression, free association, free assembly are extremely restricted in law and policy and practice. And what the internet has become is a lifeline for the expression of those rights, for the fulfillment of those rights. So what we see is when we say internet freedom, we are actually talking about the actualization of every single right that we see enshrined in international human rights law, whether that be freedom of speech, access to information, but also things like rights to health, gender equality. All of these things are facilitated through the internet. Because what the internet does is it allows access to information in uncensored spaces. It allows for associations and conversations that could not happen in real life. It allows people to mobilize social action at times of social unrest or elections or war. And without the internet, many of these things would be almost impossible in Iran. And the Iranian government, of course, is very aware of the power of digital tools and has erected one of the most authoritarian internet systems in the world, which they call the National Information Network, which is several layers of infrastructure, of applications, and of content, all designed to control society and control what it can do. The internet is heavily based on the principles of censorship and surveillance. And this is done through many forms. And it has also erected an entire marketplace to push people towards censorship and surveillance. So, for example, if you want to access WhatsApp, an internationally based tool, it will cost you exactly twice as much as it would to use the Iranian state-approved, highly surveilled version of WhatsApp. If you want to register for university, you have to use applications like Rubica, which are essentially spyware that you put on your phone. And despite all these incentives and laws to have people gravitate towards the National Information Network, Iranians, like they've done on many other issues, have resisted the state. So despite it being more expensive to use international services than local services, still up to 70% of traffic goes internationally. This is a great cost to the population, a population facing an economic crisis, but nonetheless they do it because they want access to free spaces, free information, and free of surveillance. And we've seen massive platforms like Instagram, Telegram, WhatsApp be censored. Still, Instagram, after being censored in Iran, has almost 90% of its users back, showing the power that the drive of the population towards using these free softwares and free spaces. The Iranian government then has to accelerate its policies to deal with the fact that the population is resisted. So many of us have seen that in times of crisis, like the women's life freedom or the 12-day war, the Iranian government looks to shut down as much of the internet as it needs to maintain control. Needs to means it could be very targeted shutdowns, like a neighborhood where a protest could happen, or, as we saw during the war, it can be a national level shutdown, which really impacts every man, woman, and child in the country. They also attack the tools that Iranians are using to access the free internet, which is mainly VPNs and other censorship tools. These tools, which are mostly, but not entirely, provided by actors outside of Iran, have been the main thorn in the side of the Islamic Republic's authoritarian internet, because they've allowed circumvention of all the policies and all the laws. But during shutdowns, they look to eliminate the utility of VPNs. They look to eliminate the utility of other circumvention tools. And they do this at great cost to the population and their own economy. So, for example, we saw during the shutdowns, repeated shutdowns in Baluchistan after the women's life freedom movement, Baluchi women, who are the most economically disadvantaged population in the country probably, were cut off from all sorts of, all their businesses that were maintained through Telegram and Instagram were essentially disabled for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they lost income. My own family member and many Iranians who were seeking refuge to places of safety during the 12-day war after Israel's attack were not able to do so because they couldn't necessarily find out information about what areas were safe. They couldn't find information about what pharmacies had their medications. So they put the country at great risk. But the Iranian government knows about these harms, and they do it anyway. Even though it costs them billions of dollars in their economy to do these shutdowns, they see that as worth it. They're already spending billions of dollars to erect this censorship and surveillance infrastructure. So the other things that happen is that they try to maintain as much control over particularly human rights defenders, journalists, activists, political opposition. And their reaction after the 12-day war has been to enact a whole new set of laws or draft laws that will further restrict internet. So, for example, the recent espionage law, which criminalizes contact with the US, Israel, and other foreign entities, includes explicitly mentions of media, digital contact, and restricts devices like Starlink satellite dishes, which are able to access the internet freely by completely bypassing the national internet. So there are other laws that are in place now. Will be a version of the Protection Act, the Protection of the Internet Protection Law, which has actually the Iranian government has tried to pass twice before in the last 7 years. They've actually tried to pass this in the Iranian parliament twice. But there was such outcry because of the censorship, the surveillance aspects of this bill, which would essentially hand over the entire control to the military apparatus of the country, the gateways of the internet, which are the doorways in and out, would be handed over to the internet. And the population actually, even in this authoritarian context, created such a fuss that the parliament dropped the bill twice. Well, now they have resurrected it after the war. They're also creating laws to punish people for spreading what they call false news. Let us know that, just so you know, one of the main things the Iranian government was trying to cover up during the 12-day wars was anything that made them look like they were taking damage. The narrative of the government was that everything that they were doing was successful, that they were being able to resist successfully, and therefore people didn't know about areas that were in crisis, infrastructure that had been hit, and this type of law would essentially criminalize that. So it's important now for Europe to understand that it can play an important role in promoting the resistance that the Iranian people have to authoritarian internets, the desire to access free expression, free association, free media in the digital space. And we are now entering a new era where site censorship is being heightened, while surveillance or VPNs and circumvention tools and security apparatuses are actually being defunded globally. So one of the threats now is the traditional funders of internet freedom technologies are now retreating from this space, which creates an opportunity for Europe to play a leadership role. If Europe shows the political will and understands that the threat to the Iranian internet is a threat to the global internet, because Iran's motto will be reproduced over and over. The transnational cyber attacks will only increase as the resistance to them is being defunded. So yes, it's a good time for us to be talking to the European Parliament, because this is a real opportunity for Europe to show its leadership on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mani. And actually, my prime question, you have answered it already. Have the aid cuts, especially of US aid and others, been a problem to you guys? And do you need the EU to step in? We have someone from EAS later on who can pick up exactly on your demand. But first, I would like to give the floor also to Ms. Narges Keshavasnia, who will especially focus on the use of surveillance to repress women's rights and fundamental freedoms, particularly in enforcing the chastity and hijab law. I'm very glad to have you with us, Narges. We can see you very well. Maybe we can also hear you very well. Let's just try.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I think everything is okay now.
Yeah, so thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me to address this vital discussion on digital repression in Iran. And we all remember the promise of Women Life Freedom uprising sparked by the death of Mahsa Jina Amini in 2022. After the protest, Iran's hardline establishment realized the old methods, the so-called morality police vans and the street patrols, had become domestically incendiary and globally stigmatized. They did not abandon control. They digitized it. They pivoted to a sophisticated tech-enabled system of social control, turning the enforcement of the mandatory hijab into a dark model of digital authoritarianism. To explain this, I'll mention three key issues: digital surveillance, gender and ethnic targeting, and the role of foreign enablers. The state's strategy is simple: leverage technology and bureaucracy to make enforcement everywhere. This system uses CCTV, facial recognition, and data tracking to punish women who appear without hijab in the new and alarming ways. The clearest example is the automated punishment system. Although the sweeping chastity and hijab law was formally suspended by the Supreme National Security Council, mounting evidence shows key provisions are being quietly implemented. Women who appear unveiled are identified through surveillance and subjected to automated text warning, fines, and the denial of public services. During the March 2025, in Nowruz holiday, authorities launched a digital dragnet in Isfahan, sending over 97,000 hijab warning texts in just 2 weeks. How do they do this? They use tools to identify phone users in public space and cross-reference them against centralized government databases. Women on foot, without providing any ID, receive early specific messages addressed by name. This layered system, combining physical surveillance, digital monitoring, and algorithmic flagging, marks a terrifying new phase in Iran's campaign to control women. This digital repression is profoundly gendered and ethnic. Women are targeted not only for their dress, but also for their speech and cultural expression. Female singers are routinely cracked open, their social media accounts seized, and wiped by the moral security police for uploading performances online. Moreover, ethnic minorities, especially Kurdish, Baluchi, and Ahwazi Arab communities, suffer the most from digital repression. Their regions are heavily securitized. During protests, authorities cut off mobile internet in cities like Zahedan and Sanandaj. This is facilitated by the National Information Network, NIN. Iran's domestic intranet designed for filter, monitor, and control citizens' online lives. Critically, Tehran did not build this digital presence on its own. It has forged partnership with foreign technology suppliers who are world leaders in surveillance and censorship tech. Chinese firms have been instrumental in enabling this infrastructure. Tiandi Technologies, already sanctioned by the US, have provided advanced facial recognition cameras and smart CCTV systems. Dahua Technology has provided surveillance infrastructure now used in the traffic camera networks enforcing hijab. Additionally, Tehran's 2025 comprehensive strategic partnership with Russia explicitly expands cooperation on digital infrastructure, creating another channel through which its surveillance capabilities can grow. We must act urgently to dismantle this repressive structure. I urge the European Union and the international community to adopt 3 core policy recommendations. First, we must expand targeted sanctions. This means imposing travel bans and asset freezes on the Iranian individuals and entities executing these digital campaigns, such as the leadership of the headquarters for promoting virtue. Second, we must strengthen support for digital rights initiatives. We must provide robust financial and technical support to ensure Iranians have access to a wide range of secure, high-quality VPNs, proxy servers, and anti-censorship tools. Third, we must elevate digital rights in diplomacy. The pervasive surveillance, the AI-driven hijab enforcement, and the internal shutdowns must be a core, non-negotiable element of diplomatic and human rights dialogue with Iran. We cannot allow algorithms to replace batons while the world looks away. The fight for women life freedom, زن زندگی آزادی, is now indivisible from the fight for digital freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Narges, for giving us an overview, but also for clearly pointing out what needs to be done on the diplomatic scene, but also when it comes to funding and sanctions. I think all of your testimonies have clearly underscored how the Iranian regime is leveraging this crisis to entrench digital authoritarianism. Blackout tactics combined with enhanced filtering, spyware deployment, intimidation of technologies, create what experts have called a digital siege. And I was actually very shocked to hear how things that we know from China when it comes to surveillance and then kind of automated punishment now also takes root in Iran. I think all of this calls for a more coherent European Union response, one that links digital rights directly with the Union's broader Iran policy and ensures that sanctions and support measures specifically target tools of surveillance and repression. Before I open the floor to questions from members, especially my two vice chairs, I would first like to invite the European Union External Action Service to provide us with a brief overview of European Union's approach to this important topic, and also to already give us first indications on how you assess the recommendations that have been made regarding increasing funding for internet freedom and to combat censorship, regarding targeted sanctions against organizations responsible for digital repression inside Iran, but I would also say Chinese and others that enable this from happening, and third, to elevate digital rights as part of our diplomatic approach. And if I understand things correctly, Gabriele Iacovino from the Iran division will be with us today remotely from Brussels. And I can already see you, Gabriele. Good to have you. The floor is yours. Some tricky questions, but I guess that's what you're used to.
Thanks a lot, and good afternoon. Thanks a lot, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor, and thanks to all the speakers this afternoon for sharing this insightful overview on internet freedom and digital repression in Iran. I would also like to thank the European Parliament for its firm commitment to the human rights situation in Iran and for its support to civil society inside and outside the country. As you know, the EU has always been clear. We fully support the aspiration for a future in which universal human rights and fundamental freedoms are respected, protected, and fulfilled. Supporting digital rights and internet freedom is essential for protecting the right to information, ensuring accountability, and enabling peaceful civic engagement through the access to open and secure digital space, secure communication tools, digital literacy, and protection against cyber repression. As we discussed today, during the June conflict, Iranian authorities imposed a near total nationwide internet blackout and severe global connectivity, limiting citizen ability to access independent information, communicate with loved ones, or evacuate safely. It's not the first time that this has happened, but these measures undermine transparency, public safety, and access to information in times of crisis. The Iranian people benefit when digital spaces remain open, secure, and inclusive. Supporting internet freedom allows independent voices, journalists, and civil society actors to share verified information, contributing to public trust and preventing misinformation during times of social or political tension. Allow me to reiterate that the EU remains fully engaged in supporting the protection of fundamental and civic freedom in Iran. Internet freedom and access to information remains areas of pivotal importance to protect these rights and to support the civil society in the country. Thank you once again for the opportunity to listen and speak today.
Thank you, Gabriele, for your remarks. And with this, I would now like to open the floor to colleagues, members, for questions to, well, either the panelists or if there's something specific for EAS as well as to colleagues, to Gabriele from EAS. Bart, I see you moving, so I give you the floor.
Thanks. And thanks very much to the very interesting speakers. Much appreciated. Thank you all. The first thing I'd like to allude to is what many speakers have already said is about sanctions. Sanctions to digital human rights perpetrators, but also, I would say, maybe we can also touch on another one. It's the companies enabling this. And Narges, you alluded to saying Chinese companies were involved. If you read the book of Anne Applebaum, she says there's no real distinction between the repression tools being used in Zimbabwe, Belarus, Venezuela, or in the streets of Tehran. I was very curious which companies are actually enabling this. And so if we engage with them here in Brussels, we can also have a conversation about that. I don't think it's... So I would really appreciate any information on that. Secondly, another question on what the EU could do. Of course, Starlink is circumventing the repressive NIN network. That's obvious. But the European Union is also working on Iris Square. We're working on several space projects. Is there something that we can do from here inside Brussels and Strasbourg to help the Iranian people for secure and free communication? That's something I would like to ask. A third question is on platforms like Meta, Google, but also Cloudflare and DNS providers. Can we have a conversation with them to, for example, do something on the Safe App Store or proxy support, that they enable their technology, that the technology itself enables freedom of expression in Iran? That would be a question. Can we do that? Last but not least, I didn't hear anything about a large-scale CCTV monitoring network. Is it present in Iran? Is CCTV being used? Are people being watched everywhere they go? Those were my questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart. And I would just collect the questions from all colleagues. I'm taking notes, so if you didn't manage to take note, I have them here, and I will try to cluster them anyways before I give them back to you. David, anything from you?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and apologies for being a few minutes late, but Strasbourg is always all over the place for all of us. I wanted to ask, I'm sorry if you already raised this, but whether the Iranian authorities have evolved or whether they introduce new surveillance technologies and censorship, particularly with regards to the use of AI and biometric data, and whether they're being supported by any countries in this regard. I wanted to also ask what strategies have proven most effective with regards to civil society to circumvent these methods of surveillance, and whether we can support also in that regard. Into EAS, how does EAS integrate digital rights and cybersecurity concerns into its broader Iran policy and human rights dialogue? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there more questions coming from the room? If not, I actually think we have quite a broad overview and a quite consistent line of questions. And I don't feel like I have to add too much. So one set of questions actually goes to who are enablers of all of that is happening. So who are companies that support this kind of censorship and digital repression? Who are other countries that provide technologies, and what can we do in terms of sanctioning? I think that was one set of questions. The second one is what can we do from the EU side? Bart, you mentioned Iris Square and other technologies that we could possibly provide. Are there any discussions happening with platforms? Are you already in touch with them? Because I know you have been very active on this topic. That would it help if we get in touch with them? And then some questions regarding very concrete technologies that are potentially being used. CCTV monitoring, is that only happening in some ethnic minority areas, or is that happening nationwide? But also the use of new technologies such as AI and biometrics. And then there was one question on effective circumvention strategies. And if you need more support in this regard, I know this is a tricky question, because if we are too public about circumvention strategies, they are not working too good anymore. But just share with us whatever you feel free to share, but also try to give us some guesses, if not after this meeting, on where the EU could support even more. And then the last question went to EAS regarding the role of digital rights in diplomatic efforts. Maybe we just do it in the reverse order. Gabriele, you can go first.
Thanks a lot for the questions. Again, as I already said, the protection of fundamental and civic freedom, together with digital rights and internet freedom and access, remain a priority for the EU and for our diplomatic effort. Maybe at this stage, Madam Chair, I would stop here, sure that there could be other occasion in camera to exchange more extensively on the topic that remain a priority.
Well understood your point, and I think you might come back to this offer. I was also informed that we have an additional expert that joined us from Mian Group, Mr. Amir Rashidi, Director for Digital Rights and Security, who has followed the discussion and also wants to give some feedback on the questions that have been put on the table. So, Mr. Rashidi, the floor is yours.
Hi, I hope you hear me and see me. I cannot
just
see,
wait a second, because we can hear you, but we cannot yet see you. But it's slowly building up. No.
Oh, okay.
Yes, wait. So now it's dark. That's already better than nothing,
Sure.
but we are still missing your face.
Sure, I'm waiting.
Maybe, should we try it again? Can you refresh? Maybe you just take over and explain him what he's supposed to do, because if you tell me and I try to tell him, that's not exactly helpful. Okay, I understand that the technical services are refreshing. Can we listen to Mani Mostofi in the meantime? Does that work? Or are we just refreshing? Okay, then we try Mani, and then after Mani we try Amir again.
Sure.
So Mani, you can press the speak button, and then we try to have you connected.
Perfect.
Yeah, Mani works. Good.
Yeah, I work great. So I don't know if I'll address all of these things in order, but I'll try to address some of the points. I'll start with the major international platforms like Meta, Google, Amazon, etc. I think the vice chair's points were extremely astute. Many of them run platforms that are extremely popular and used in Iran. Two clear examples are YouTube and Instagram. We have often advocated with these platforms that they build proxies into their apps. So circumvention can be a tool. What that does is it pits the resources of a Meta or a Google against the Islamic Republic, which is much better than the resources of a Mian Group against the Islamic Republic, as you can imagine. It also, part of the overall strategy to the question of strategy is diversification is what we need. So there's not one tool. So Starlink and satellite have some advantages, but they have severe limitations. For example, in terms of being able scalable, they're not platforms that are going to be serving tens of millions. That's a VPN. A VPN serves tens of millions. And we actually saw in the recent war, innovations in VPN technologies actually created some connectivity. So there were several low millions, but between 1 and 2 million users were still able to get online using VPNs that were produced outside of the country. We recently published a report on this, which can be made available to the delegation. The other thing that Meta and Google and similar players can do is not roll back policies they already have. So Google has a very wonderful subdivision called Jigsaw, which creates circumvention tools. The most notable one is Outline. That's not only used in Iran, it's used in Russia, it's used in Venezuela, it's used in China. It's all of these efforts, all of these technologies have a global focus. We are not advocating only for Iran-focused technologies. We're advocating for global-focused technologies. But Google is cutting funding to Jigsaw, and now Jigsaw is looking to become a nonprofit organization like all the others, going for the same donor funding. So these organizations who benefit from internet freedom, champion it in their discourse and branding, really need to commit to it financially and with their engineers. Their engineers are key to the equation. The other thing that I will address is the issue of sanctions. I'll leave it to my colleagues to talk about which specific companies in Iran are involved. But I will say that we have a policy in which we always recommend sanctions avoid internet infrastructure level technologies. So that's gateways, that's fiber optic cables, that's data centers. And the reason is that these are the foundation of the internet. And if we impact the foundation, we essentially are helping the censorship apparatus because we make the internet much harder and we are actually contributing to cutting Iran off from the global internet. What is available are companies that create surveillance and censorship tools at an application level. So those are the companies that we recommend targeting. The EU has done that effectively, and the EU has, in conversation, looked at infrastructure level technologies and whether or not those sanctions were appropriate. We always recommend member states adopt that as a policy. So when they do their harm assessment, they ask themselves, is this company providing infrastructure? If they do the cost-benefit analysis. Usually the collateral impact is worse for internet freedom than that the sanction itself benefits. And the other thing that I will just quickly add is in terms of the strategies, there's maybe 3 or 4 main things that should be looked at. One is continuing to fund VPNs and everyday circumvention tools. The other one is the exploration of satellite as a new technology, which includes things like data casting, which means using television to get data into the country that can then be put on the internet, and also the idea of decentralized networks. And I would say that's the hierarchy. I think VPNs do the heavy lifting, and they're not as fancy anymore because of these new technologies like satellite. But these are the things that are getting tens of millions of people online, as opposed to tens of thousands in the best case scenario for satellite technologies and decentralized networks. And of course, there needs to be a commitment to R&D. Europe has the Next Generation Internet Project, which funds research within Europe for new technologies. That could incorporate the idea that internet freedom enabling technologies be part of the research that's being done and as part of the next generation. There's a lot of European talent that is not in the space of the free internet space, and having that European talent on board would make a big difference in many parts of the world, including Iran.
Thank you, Vani, also for these very concrete proposals on which I think we can very well follow up as a delegation. And I think you realize that we have some very specific expertise, especially on cyber, sitting in our bureau. I was now made aware that we can listen to Amir, but not see Amir. We cannot even listen. Okay, so Amir is still having issues. So is Narges still online? So maybe Narges, you can focus again on the issue of CCTV monitoring, and maybe you also have some knowledge on the use of new technologies such as AI and biometrics. And I think also the questions, but that's also something we can do in a written procedure if it's not available to you directly now, which foreign companies are enablers of this digital repression inside Iran. So Narges, if you still have some additional information to share with us, very happy to have you online again, which means you would have to press the speak button.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you about the feedback and questions, but unfortunately, I think the best person for this question about CCTV network in Iran or Chinese or the Russian network technologies, I think Amir is better because he can speak from technical side. I think we can wait a couple minutes for Amir, if you agree.
Okay, then that's what we will do. We'll try to wait another minute or two. I hear that we can try, so let's just try. If it's only the voice, we don't have translation anyway, so I think only the voice should be fine. Oh, now we have the full experience. Good to see you, Amir.
Hi, sorry. Sometimes these tech issues are challenge. I missed the part of it, but I don't know if you get answer for your questions or not. Just if
I
you
will.
can.
Let me point out the questions that I think are still open, but colleagues can complement if I miss something. One is on the foreign enablers, so which companies or countries are enabling digital repression in Iran, so that we can also think about sanctions there. Then there was the question about how widely CCTV monitoring is being used in Iran already, and how new technologies, especially AI and biometric searches or queries, are used already inside Iran. I think that were the main ones that have not been answered, but if you feel comfortable to also give us insights into some of the other ones, feel free to go ahead.
Sure. Let me start from the last question. A couple of months ago, we put out a report researching on how basically women are being identified, those who are not wearing proper hijab, whatever definition the Iranian government has defined it proper. In the city of Isfahan, as it was mentioned in Nargis's speech. And it turns out the biometric actually playing an important role. So there are a couple of different technology being used to identify them. One of them is using their biometric information by basically reading their national ID cards. All the biometric information is embedded in the national ID card. And if somebody passed by you, simply can read those information from your card. And in our research, we actually find something quite interesting and a little bit funny, because sometimes we saw during that research that father of that woman receiving text message, the warning text message. And the reason was because for whatever reason, at that time, at that point, that woman was basically carrying out the ID card of her father. That's why the father was receiving the basically warning text messages. So biometric information are playing important role. Iran is just in at the very beginning of step of using biometric information within an ID card, within a passport, with all of these things, and using for the surveillance and the censorship at the same time. On foreign enablers, so Iran, again, as it was in the Nargis's speech, Iran has an agreement to cooperate with China and Russia. And this cooperation is not only to provide them with a piece of software or piece of hardware. This cooperation is much broader than that, basically teaching them, learning them, training them how they can use technology. And the result is we saw that Iran also developed its own software based on the information, training, and equipment they received from China and Russia to do the surveillance. And that surveillance also playing a role within the situation of women in Iran. Because another method is basically turning 5G or 3G or 5G into 2G. When you are in the street, they can downgrade your mobile data to 2G. Then you have less security. Then they can do more surveillance and and monitoring against you. So so my point is basically we shouldn't just look for the name of a particular company. That's definitely something we need to do if any company is doing any collaboration from Russia or China with Iran. But also we need to look how they transfer knowledge, how they transfer this kind of equipment to Iran to be able to enable them to develop their own software, their own technology. And I had a point on the collaboration with the tech company and what EU can do if we have time.
We do. Go ahead. That's what we need.
Sure, definitely. So yes, these big tech companies, they can play a huge and important role to enable Iranian to be connected to the free world, to outside Iran, and pass this all these barriers from the security point of view or from the access point of view. And this has not be, should not be only, we should not look only at the tech company within the United States. Definitely we need to work with them, but also within the EU territory as well. There are data centers in EU and US. They can provide access for VPNs and circumvention tools developer to enable Iranian to bypass the censorship. There was conversation about Starlink. Definitely, we need to support access to whatever method and whatever technology. I know EU has its own satellite internet project. Definitely, we need to get support and help from that project. But also, we need to pay attention. We shouldn't look at only one solution. What we need to is basically comprehensive. All these tools, VPN, circumvention, peer-to-peer technology, satellite technology. Because when we look at all this internet shutdown in the past, sometimes one tool is working, the other tool is not working. The other day, another tool is working, the other tool is not working. And it's also based on the geolocation. A tool that is working very well in Tehran might not work in Sistan and Baluchistan. So we need to look at all of these technology and tools. And the tech companies, they have the engineering capacity. They have money, right? All this traffic coming from Iran to all these platforms, it's money for them, right? So maybe now they can play the role because they commit to support human rights. They can play a role by supporting VPN technology and also security, working with the organization that supports security for Iranian and also access. One last point. Sorry if I'm talking a little bit too much. As you may know, we are running a digital security help desk. So whoever outside Iran or inside Iran, they need security support, they can come to us and we can support them. We are seeing a rise of number among Iranian diaspora who are living outside the country, outside Iran, that they are being targeted by Iranian. We are seeing a number of the Iranian living in Germany who come to our help desk for support is being is rising. The next one is France, then is Belgium, then is Austria, then is Netherlands, then is Sweden. So when we talk about the transnational repression, the effort and the investment Iranian government putting in place to target Iranian who are living abroad is getting increased. So we need more support to be able basically to support them. So to sum it up, more support on access and security is very much needed.
Thank you, Amir, also especially for the last point. And you will have to say something again in a second, so don't run away. Because I think the Digital Security Hub is a very important piece of information for people who may follow us in here. I may also have had my experiences with cyber attacks of the Iranian regime. So maybe one thing, if you could just explain to everyone quickly how they can find you. And the second thing that I would like to just send to you whenever you manage to identify that somebody has been hacked by the Iranians, and they are living in the European Union, please, please, please encourage them to also report to our security services, because our security services kind of have no clue how big the threat is, because people are very, very reluctant to report, and Bart said also to us. But maybe if you could just quickly say how people can find you in the internet, if now they feel like they better want to have their weird email accounts doing funny things checked.
Of course, people can go on mian.org/DSH. All the information, how they can contact our digital security help desk is there. They can contact us via email, with encrypted email, or Signal, WhatsApp, and Telegram. All the information is on mian.org/DSH.
Thank you. I'm very lucky we could make this little advertisement because I think it is an important one and a crucial one for our security. Dear speakers, dear colleagues, thank you for this very insightful, I would say, exchange today. And I'm pretty sure we will discuss in the Bureau how we can do a good follow-up of this session. By contacting EU services again regarding additional possibilities of funding, but also on the sanctions issue, seeing how we can reach out to platforms so that they enable Iranians to bypass some of these repressive tactics, all knowing very well that Iran is by far not the only regime doing this. So especially if we talk to platforms or if we support certain technologies, we are not just doing that for Iranians, but for internet freedom, and thus freedom for everyone. If there are no other remarks, I would actually say that was a very good session that I would close now. I thank you once again for taking part in today's meeting, and we will inform you about time and place of the next session in due time. Thank you, colleagues, and to you, a successful rest of a crazy plenary week.